Welcome everyone to the 2021 Festival of Teaching and Learning. My name is Jana Grekel and I'm a member of the steering committee for the festival. The University of Alberta's Centre for Teaching and Learning acknowledges that we are located on Treaty 6 territory and respects the histories, languages, and cultures of First Nations, Métis, Inuit, and all First Peoples of Canada, whose presence continues to enrich our vibrant community. Before I introduce our presenter today, I'd like you to note that a Google form will be entered into the chat for you to submit questions to the presenters. The Google form allows us to organize the questions as they come in. Thank you. Today, I'd like to introduce you to Joanna Zuluaga. Joanna is a lecturer in human ecology in the Faculty of Agricultural, Life, and Environmental Sciences. Thank you so much for being here today, Joanna, and all of you. Now I would like to pass it over to our presenter.
Thank you very much, Jana. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here today. So let me start this journey with who I am. So thank you, everyone, for allowing me to share this presentation with you. I work as a consultant with KPMG, and I do mostly human-centered design for human and social services. And then I started teaching, and last term I was teaching a class, and I did co-design and co-created the syllabus with the students. And that's the journey that I'm going to share with you today, and hopefully we can chat about how we can do our classrooms more human-centered for our students. So this is the class that I was teaching the previous term, AILS 204. And there is not a better way for me to describe what this classroom looks like. So we have around 200 students from the Faculty of AILS. And although this class is supposed to be at 200 level, the students can take it at any point during their program. So I had students who were in their first semester, and I had students who were graduating the semester that we were working together. And of course, diversity in terms of culture and gender, and lots of different perspectives. And that makes it a little bit more tricky to be able to build something that is personalized and human-centered designed than when you have something that is smaller, or a group of people who is more homogeneous. So basically, when we talk about human-centered design, we are talking about putting the needs of the users at the center of whatever we are developing. And in this class, we are talking about the students. So basically, there are three main concepts that we need to keep in mind in anything that we do when we are trying to put their experiences and their needs at the center. The first one, of course, is empathy. Anything that we do, we need to come from a common understanding of where they are coming from. What are their needs? What are their struggles? What are their strengths? And then we will have, of course, collaboration. And that one, it's a little bit challenging because as an instructor, we are usually holding the power. We are the ones who create the direction. We are the ones who tell the students what to do. But when we talk about this type of approach, we are leaving behind that idea of I'm creating a class for my students, and we are moving to something like we are creating with the students. So we are working together. This is a journey that we are going to develop together. And of course, it's going to end in something that is more creative, but it's also more risky. So these three concepts are important to keep in mind in any type of activity that you are doing in the classroom if you want to keep their experiences at the center. And what I'm going to show now, it's kind of the journey that I had for that co-creation of the syllabus, taking into account those three elements of human-centered design. So we start with planning. We have the normal three buckets that we all are familiar with. We have planning, we have executing, and we have evolution. So, and executing will be the co-design exercise. So for planning, and this started probably 3 months before the term was starting. I created a perfect syllabus. Like I did work so hard, and I made sure that everything was perfect and clear, and I asked people to read it for me and make sure that they were understanding what the agreements were, like everything. But I couldn't sleep, and like something was not feeling right. And what was not feeling right was the lack of the students' voice on what I was doing. And that's part of my teaching philosophy. And it's also part of my personal philosophy. Like in everything that I do, I always like to collaborate, make sure that we are co creating things. So I decided that I needed to do that for this class, regardless of what the challenges could be. But then the second question is, yeah, I know that I want to do this, and I believe that this is the best approach, but how realistic is it? So that reality check is really important. So you will need to consider like how many students you have, what the format is. So in my case, we were talking about 200 students, virtual environment, um, time zone differences. Like there were many challenges and constraints that I needed to take into account. So the best approach that I could make, that I made up in that case, was co-creating the syllabus. In a smaller classroom, ideally, I would like to develop like specific journeys for each student, like different approaches, but that was not possible for this class. So knowing that, the next question is, what are your goals? And this is basically, are you doing this because you want to increase engagement of the students? If that's the case, you could go with a lighter approach. But if your goal, for example, is to empower the students to develop their own learning journeys and decide like of the outcomes that you have in the classroom, like how are they planning to achieve this and where they are today and where they need to be in 6 months or 3 months, actually. Um, that's different, and that requires a different amount of effort, and the approach would be different too. So once you know what your goals are, and in my case, like it was a very targeted and specific input that I was trying to get from them, the next step is planning, like creating a plan. So how are you gonna do it? I did dedicate 2 sessions of the class to co-designing the syllabus. And this is one of my lessons learned. I don't think that I would do it again, and we can talk about that later during the Q&A. But then is that plan, like how many sessions are you gonna spend with this? Are you gonna involve all the students, or are you gonna invite all the students, but you are gonna allow them to decide if they wanna participate or not? Or are you gonna take a sample, for example, and ask like there's a specific student to provide their feedback? So that's a moment when you define like what exactly you are gonna do. And once you know that, you will need to develop like a skeleton of your syllabus. So in my case, I created a kind of a draft syllabus, but it was more like an outline where I would include the information for the things that were non-negotiable for me, like my policy for late assignments. Like I wasn't willing to negotiate that piece, so I put it there. But for the other things, I would put placeholders, like assignments. And I will include something like, here are some suggested assignments, but we will talk more about this during our co-creation exercise. And that way, the students came prepared, knowing like exactly what we were negotiating and what was out of the table. And last but not least, with the planning, and this is a very important step too, it's inviting your students. So a welcoming note. In my case, I created a video and also like a learning community invitation, an email. Like I sent them the draft syllabus in advance, but I actually also created like discussion questions in preparation for the co-creation exercise, because for most of them, this was completely new. And if you as a student, like provide input on the syllabus, like they don't usually know exactly like what do you mean, like what are we talking about. So it's important for you to provide like guiding questions. For example, in my case, I was like, what are the 3 things that have worked well in previous classes that you would like to implement in this class? What are things that didn't work well and you really want to avoid and you don't want to leave again? Like those type of more open-ended questions, they work pretty well and they come more prepared to share their experiences. And that takes all the planning. And once that planning is over and you have a date, an invitation, and everyone knows what you are going to be doing, you move to the co-design session or sessions, depending on what you are going to do. And in this one, I would say that those first 2 buckets should always go together, because we understand that this is a collaboration piece and that you are working with the students, but you also have so much background information, years of experience that you can bring to the table to guide them in their discussion. So I always recommend people to bring, do you have research? Bring research information. That's great. People love knowing that they have reliable information in the table. Your experiences. Be open to share things that you have already tried in other classes and didn't work, and why. Or things that you have already tried and actually worked well and you would like to try. At the end, it's going to be the student's decision about how they want to guide that learning journey in that case. We can talk a little bit more about tools at the end too, but when I say learn from your students, it's open spaces for them to share their stories, what they fear, where they are at that point in their career, what are they looking for. In my case, I created a first self-reflection assignment that it had a very minimal weight in their final grades, but it was a nice way for them to actually share the level of skills that they had, the fears that they had around being in an online environment or being in a communication class for the first time, their expectations that they had from their instructor, just getting to know them. That way you can be also more empathetic around the type of challenges that they are facing. And you will uncover lots of stories, some of them very happy and exciting, and some of them painful, but they are important for you to be able to develop that empathy. And once you put all that information together from the workshops and assignments and any means that you are using to collect information, you will refine your ideas and will create a solid draft of the pieces that you were negotiating with the students. And you will have a final prototype that it's basically the syllabus. And I call it a prototype only because if you are engaging in human-centered design and co-creation with the students, you need to be prepared to make changes in the future as the term goes and things change and we realize that there are things that are working or things that are not. And that takes us to evolution. And here, one important piece of advice, as much feedback as you can get, the better. In my case, I created midterm evaluations. I had peer teaching assistants, peer buddies, and we were getting together bi-weekly just to chat for 15 minutes and see if they were seeing any themes in their Discord channel, if they were seeing any themes in the conversations that they had with other students, and we would make changes, not in that group, but we would bring those ideas to the larger group and say hey, this is what we are hearing and here are the proposals about things that we could change, and we will make a decision as a group. And that requires you, of course, to be ready to make changes, but also I want to be very clear about this. You don't need to change everything and you don't need to be open to make further changes if that doesn't feel right to you as an instructor. But it's important just to be clear all the time with the students about how much you are willing to change and what not. And finally, last but not least, this is a very important piece. Just treasure those nice things that the students are going to say about the the experience that they have with the co-creation exercise. That's going to keep you going because it's a challenging process, like letting our power go a little bit and being able to adapt and be flexible is not something that it's very natural for all of us. And treasuring like those nice words and encouragement from the students makes a huge difference. Then, like that's kind of the process that I went through. The key takeaways of not only this exercise, but like any human-centered design work that I have done so far, is the methodologies or the principles are simple. It's not that difficult to incorporate them into your day-to-day work, but they require lots of work. So you prefer to spend more time than you usually spend preparing class or like refining things or connecting with students because you are going to create a stronger relationship with them, but that's demanding too. And human-centered design is not a perfect solution by any means. You are going to have students who are going to be very engaged, as you can see from the quotes. So I had students who were super excited about the exercise and they did love the class and that made a difference for them and made them feel empowered. But I also had students complaining about, but that's too much ambiguity and I'm not prepared for that. And we waste so much time collaborating. Like, what's the purpose of that? So those would be like my key takeaways. And I think that this takes us to the end of my presentation and we can move to the Q&A.